The HOA enforcer drove his SUV down my private trail, so I set a trap. I'd lived on this land longer than my old Chevy had been coughing oil in the driveway, and that's no small feat. The trail behind my cabin wasn't just a path, it was my sanctuary, a rugged ribbon of dirt and pine needles etched by my grandfather's boots and mine. It was where I'd hunt, think, and escape the world's noise. Nobody drove it unless they were family, desperate, or drunk, usually all three. So when Mark Hensley, the HOA's self-appointed overlord, roared his gleaming $70,000 SUV through it, flattening my turkey decoy like a pancake and sneering, "This is under HOA control," I faced a choice: punch him or outsmart him. I chose the latter, and it sparked a war that shook our quiet neighborhood to its core. Mark wasn't from here. He'd bought the gaudy corner mansion 6 months back, joined the HOA by week 2, and by month 3 was spouting rules that sounded like he'd invented them. Section 9.1c bans non-conforming lawn ornaments. He'd lecture or unfenced poultry violates aesthetic codes. The first time I met him, he was measuring my mailbox's height with a tape measure. The second, he fined me $200 because my cedar fence disrupted the community's visual flow. But this? Driving over my trail, crushing my decoy, and threatening to pave it for utility access? That was the line. My blood boiled, and something primal snapped. Mark strutted around in a neon HOA vest he probably ordered online, barking into a Bluetooth headset like he was running a military op. That morning, as I cleaned a deer with a whiskey-laced coffee in hand, I heard his SUV's tires crunching over my trail's sacred leaves. Then came the sickening crack of my decoy. His window slid down, and he smirked. "Unauthorized terrain. We'll need to pave this for access." I gripped the deer's leg like a club and growled, "Pave it, and I'll bury your engine in gravel." He chuckled, thinking I was bluffing, and peeled out, spraying mud. That night I skipped dinner, poured a double bourbon, and got to work. I spent 3 hours welding a spiked trap, not to kill, but to teach. Old nails, rebar, and a rusted rake became a tire-shredding beast, hidden under leaves on the trail. Was it a legal gray area? Sure. Was it satisfying? Like a cold beer on a hot day. The next morning, I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, waiting. At 9:45 a.m., Mark's SUV thundered down the road, opera music blaring loud enough to scare every deer in the county. He turned onto my trail, and then, pop! A hiss, a wobble, and his beast lurched left. Pop! 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 All 4 tires shredded. I sipped my coffee as he stumbled out, kneeling beside his ruined tires like they were fallen soldiers. His face twisted in shock, then suspicion. He knew he'd been hunted. Mark didn't quit. By evening, a notice was taped to my mailbox. "Security breach reported. Surveillance imminent." He doubled down, cruising past my house in a golf cart like a suburban dictator. Then came the camera, a cheap model with a blinking red light, nailed to a tree across the road, aimed at my cabin. I flipped it off, waved, and got creative. I'd built a scarecrow in my old army jacket, holding a mirror that blasted sunlight into his lens like a divine laser. 3 days later, the camera was gone, but Mark hit back, citing my mailbox as excessively rustic. It was war, petty, absurd, and thrilling. The neighborhood split. Some, like my buddy Jack, an ex-Marine who once shot down a drone for flying over his yard, backed me. So did Sarah and Tom, a young couple who loved their brews and backyard freedom. Others, led by Karen, a yoga-obsessed HOA loyalist with a dog and designer sweaters, formed a group chat called Neighborhood Pride, plotting to keep things civilized. Rumors swirled. Some said I'd unleashed wild boars. Others thought Mark drove into a ditch. I stayed quiet, but Jack handed me a 6-pack with a nod, like I'd earned a medal. Then things got weird. Late one night, checking a trail cam that had gone offline, I spotted a blue flicker in the woods. Not a campfire, electricity. I crept closer and found a shack, slapped together with plywood and humming with a gas generator. Inside were wires, consoles, and what looked like satellite gear. Parked nearby, under a camo tarp, was Mark's spare SUV. This wasn't about my trail anymore. Mark was running something shady, maybe illegal, maybe worse. I needed backup, not from the cops, who'd probably find me for snooping, but from someone sharper. Enter Evelyn Harper. Evelyn, the neighborhood's cardigan-wearing widow, was no ordinary grandma. She'd spent 30 years in counterintelligence, once debunking a CIA code over breakfast. When I told her about the shack, she poured tea and said, "I've been watching him since he fined me for my tulips." She'd already hacked Mark's HOA emails, tracing his internet to an offshore server. We formed a plan. She'd plant a listening device, I'd gather footage, and we'd move like spies. Using walkie-talkies from her attic, we spoke in code, turning our feud into a covert op. It was ridiculous and exhilarating. Mark kept pushing, citing my lawn, threatening to reclassify my land as transitional. But we were closing in. Evelyn's dossier grew, emails, signal logs, photos of Mark swapping a briefcase at a truck stop. The showdown came at the HOA meeting, where Mark planned to seize control of all adjacent pathways, including my trail. He stood at the front, clipboard in hand, smug as ever. I waited until he read his motion, then stepped up. "Folks, before we vote, let's see what Mark's been up to." Evelyn fired up the projector, and the room froze. First slide, Mark's shack, lit up like a crime scene. Next, his signal equipment. Then, footage of his truck stop deal. Finally, a map tracing his signals to a flagged offshore node. Gasps echoed. Karen dropped her iced tea. Mark's clipboard hit the floor as he stammered, "This is a hobbyist project." Nobody bought it. Karen stood and demanded, "Are you running a black market network from the woods?" He bolted for the door, but outside, a black SUV with government plates waited. Jack had called a contact in a 3-letter agency. 2 agents flashed badges and said, "Mark Hensley, we need to talk about unlicensed signal exports." The room erupted. Some cheered, Karen fainted. Tom posted it all online. Mark was escorted out, his empire crumbled. The HOA dissolved his rules, voided his fines, and tore down his shack. His mansion hit the market, stripped of its tech upgrades. The new HOA, led by folks who just wanted clean streets, protected my trail as a historic pathway. I framed that rule and hung it in my shed. Life settled down. Flags flew crooked again, lawns grew wild, and I walked my trail each morning, thermos in hand. Evelyn became a legend. Some say she's writing a spy novel, others think she's back in the game. She just visits for coffee and poker, watching squirrels raid Mark's old bird feeder. Mark self-published a book, I Fought for Order, My HOA Journey, with a cover of him wielding a clipboard like a knight. I bought copies, sent one to each ex-board member, and burned the rest at our bonfire. I didn't win because I was richer or smarter. I won because I was stubborn, patient, and just crazy enough to turn a fight over a trail into a neighborhood uprising. You can't regulate grit. You can't bully a man with a welder, a Marine buddy, and a spy next door. The HOA had rules, but I had the land, and the land always wins. What do you think? Was my trap a step too far, or did Mark deserve it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear your take on pranks, feuds, and standing your ground. Share this story if you've ever clashed with an overzealous rulemaker, and let's get this debate rolling.